This week's theme on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast is Anatomy of a Perfect Credit Score. And today I was reminded it's episode 1974. So if my podcast were, a person and it was born in 1974, it would be my sister, my sissy, as I like to call her. She's quite a bit older than me, and she's actually going to be 50 this year. So I just want to give a shout out to my sister, Dawn. Happy upcoming birthday. Happy 1974. Happy 50th birthday this year. I was just thinking about her today as I was recording this episode. Anyways, yesterday I talked about the most important factor when determining your credit score, and that is payment history. And basically, it's never missing a payment, always paying on time. And that is the biggest determinant of your overall credit score. I talked about never evers a couple weeks ago, like never ever do this when it comes to receiving a windfall, but like a never ever when it comes to your finances in general, especially if you're trying to build your credit or improve your credit score. Never ever miss a payment. Never ever pay late. Okay. So today I want to dive into some other factors of what makes a perfect credit score or even just a good enough credit score. Now, the good news is that this isn't some like magic secret formula. There's lots of information out there and it's pretty consistent. If you do your own research, you'll see that payment history consistently the most important thing. Like it's no history what makes up a good or no mystery, I should say, of what makes up a great credit score. So let's talk about some of the other factors. The next one is amounts owed, AKA credit utilization. This makes up 30% of your overall credit score. And the general advice is that you should keep this below 30% as well, but the lower the better. I'll talk about later this week the fact that the people with a perfect credit score are like below 10% as far as credit utilization. So what this means is that if you add up your various credit card limits or overall debt limits, let's say you have 5 credit cards and the total credit limit you have across all those cards is $50,000. Ideally, if you're keeping that below 10 or 15,000, you want to keep that again below 30%. That's good. And the lower, the better. So we want to have a high credit limit, but a low utilization. And ideally would probably be somewhere in the single digits. So if you had a $50,000 credit limit, then, $5,000, that would be 10%. $5,000 would be more ideal and better than $10,000 or something like that. Okay, the next one is length of credit history. And this accounts for 15% of your credit score. So how long have your credit accounts been established? Some of you may have had a credit card. You've had the same credit card going back all the way to the 1980s or, that's great. That's really helping you because, if you look at specific credit accounts, how long have those been established? That counts. Another one that you hear a lot and that I've heard a bunch ever since I was early 20s and just getting started with establishing credit and getting my first credit card is how long has it been since you used your credit cards? So I have a credit card. It just sits in my wallet. I never use it. I have to look. I'm not even sure it's in there. I hope it's in there. The risk here is that the card can become inactive and then the issuer of that card can close the account. So if that happens, then that would decrease my total available credit limit. And that could lower my score because now my credit utilization would go down. Now, so far that hasn't been an issue. But when you hear people say that you should, have a bunch of credit cards, use all of them, that's generally why you hear that advice. Okay, the next factor of your credit score is your credit mix. And this accounts for 10%. So now we're getting into nitpicky stuff. If you only have one credit card, that's fine. It's probably not going to hurt you as much. But having a mix of different credit cards, retail accounts, installment loans, different types of accounts, mortgage loans, car loans, etc. So the mix, the variety of debts that you have does help your credit score. Because if you just had one credit card and nothing else, lenders want to see that you can manage different types of debts. And so that's why it contributes to your overall credit. So if you're doing everything right, but your credit score still isn't the best it can be, or maybe you see that credit and you're like, wait a second, I'm doing everything right. Like, what's going on? This is usually the reason why, is because you may not have enough different types of debts. But at that point, like, is that just vanity at that point? Like, if you're doing everything else right, this factor only accounts for 10% of your total credit score. So if you don't have as much debt as you could in order to just help your credit score, but everything else you're doing well, then I wouldn't even sweat this. Okay, then the last factor that accounts for about 10% of your score as well is new credit. So you want to avoid opening several different credit accounts in a short amount of time. So lenders look at that as a red flag, especially if you don't have a long credit history. Like if you're going on a shopping spree and you're like, I'm going to open a credit here at, Nordstrom and Macy's and the jewelry store, and, you're opening all these credit cards in a weekend, that ain't good. So you want to avoid things like that. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Ashley Michike, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips Podcast.